On Friday, May 8th, I dined with Johnson at Mr. Langton's. I was reserved and silent, which I suppose he perceived and might recollect the cause. If you'll recall, yesterday they were fighting, and Boswell was trying to snub Johnson. After dinner, when Mr. Langton was called out of the room, and we were by ourselves, he drew his chair near to mine and said in a tone of conciliating courtesy, "Well, how have you done?" I said, "Sir, you have made me very uneasy with your behavior to me when we were last at Sir Josh Reynolds's. You know, my dear sir, no man has a greater respect and affection for you, or would sooner go to the end of the world to serve you. Now, to treat me so—" He insisted that I had interrupted him, which I assured him was not the case, and proceeded, "But why treat me so before people who neither love you nor me?" Johnson said, "Well, I am sorry for it. I'll make it up to you 20 different ways, as you please." I said today to Sir Joshua, when he observed that you tossed me sometimes, I don't care how often or how high he tosses me, when only friends are present, for then I fall upon soft ground. But I do not like falling on stones, which is the case when enemies are present. I think this is a pretty good image, sir." Johnson said, "Sir, it is one of the happiest I have ever heard. The truth is, there was no venom in the wounds which he inflicted at any time, unless they were irritated by some malignant infusion by other hands. We were instantly as cordial again as ever, and joined in a hearty laugh at some ludicrous but innocent peculiarities of one of our friends." It says there in a footnote, perhaps Langton. I said, "Do you think, sir, it is always culpable to laugh at a man into his face?" And Johnson said, "Why, sir, that depends upon the man and the thing. If it is a slight man and a slight thing, you may, for you take nothing valuable from him." He said, "I read yesterday Dr. Blair's sermon on devotion from the text, 'Cornelius, a devout man.' His doctrine is the best limited, the best expressed. There is the most warmth without fanaticism and most rational transport. There is one part of it which I disapprove, and I'd have him correct it, which is that he who does not feel joy in religion is far from the kingdom of heaven. There are many good men whose fear of God predominates over their love. It may discourage." It was rashly said. A noble sermon it is indeed. I wish Blair would come over to the Church of England. When Mr. Langton returned to us, the flow of talk went on. An eminent author, says here, Croker, Robertson suggests, in a footnote, him being mentioned, Johnson said, "He is not a pleasant man. His conversation is neither instructive nor brilliant. He does not talk as if impelled by any fullness of knowledge or vivacity of imagination. His conversation is like that of any other sensible man. He talks with no wish either to inform or to hear, but only because he thinks it does not become blank to sit in a company and say nothing." I say blank, there's just a big blank here. It says become blank blank to sit. I guess that we're supposed to put Croker in there. It does not become Croker to sit in a company and say nothing. Mr. Langton, having repeated the anecdote of Addison having distinguished between his powers in conversation and in writing, by saying, "I have only 9 pence in my pocket, but I can draw for 1,000 pounds. Johnson said, "He had not that retort ready, sir. He had prepared it beforehand." Langton said, turning to me, "A fine surmise. Set a thief to catch a thief." Johnson called the East Indians barbarians. I said, "You will accept the Chinese, sir?" Johnson said, "No, sir." I said, "Have they not arts?" Johnson said, "They have pottery." I said, "What do you say to the written characters of their language?" Johnson said. Sir, they have not an alphabet. They have not been able to form what all other nations have formed. I said, there's more learning in their language than in any other, from the immense number of their characters. Johnson said, it is only more difficult from its rudeness, as there is more labor in hewing down a tree with a stone than with an axe. Okay. He said, I have been reading Lord Crame's Sketches of the History of Man. In treating of severity of punishment, he mentions that of Madame Lapochin in Russia, but he does not give it fairly, for I have looked at Chap d'Artroc, from whom he has taken it. He stops where it is said that the spectators thought her innocent, and leaves out that what follows, that she nevertheless was guilty. Now, this is being as culpable as one can conceive to misrepresent facts in a book. And for what motive? It is like one of those lies which people tell one cannot see why. The woman's life was spared, and no punishment was too great for the favorite of an empress who had conspired to dethrone her mistress. I said, he was only giving a picture of the lady in her sufferings. Johnson said, nay, don't endeavor to palliate this. Guilt is a principal feature in the picture. Crames is puzzled with a question that puzzled me when I was a very young man. Why is it that the interest of money is lower when money is plentiful? For £5 has the same proportion of value to £100 when money is plentiful as when it is scarce. A lady explained it to me. It is, said she, because when money is plentiful, there are so many more who have money to lend than they bid down one another. Many have then £100, and one says, take mine rather than another's, and you shall have it at 4%. I said to this, does Lord Crames decide the question? Johnson answered, I think he leaves it as he found it. I said, this may have been an extraordinary lady who instructed you, sir. May I ask who she was? And Johnson said, Molly Aston, sir, the sister of those ladies with whom you dined at Lichfield. I shall be at home tomorrow. I said, then let us dine by ourselves at the Mitre to keep up the old custom. The custom of the manor, the custom of the mitre. And Johnson said, sir, so it shall be. There's a footnote here about Molly Astor. It says, oh, and there's some French, it looks like. Johnson had an extraordinary admiration of this lady, notwithstanding she was a violent Whig. In answer to her high-flown speeches for liberty, he addressed to her the following epigram, of which I presume to offer a translation. Liber ut est velum, it's Latin, sunset pulchra Maria, un mentiam liber pulchra Maria vale, which translates as, adieu, Maria, since you've had me free, for who beholds thy charms a slave must be. A correspondent of the Gentleman's Magazine, who subscribes himself Scolius, to whom I am indebted for several excellent remarks, observes, the turn of Dr. Johnson's lines to Miss Aston, whose Whig principles he had been combating, appears to me to be taken from an ingenious epigram in the Menagiana, on a young lady who appeared at a masquerade, habillée in Jesuit, during the fierce contentations of the following Molinos, Louis Molina, and Jansenius concerning free will. And then there's a French here. Can't read in French, but you know what the hell? I'm going to read it anyway. En cette année ici qui celeste ait pris les habitats des Molenstay, puisque c'était gênant buite ote un chacun ses libertés n'est pas une Jensenedette. I'll look up a translation later. There's no one here. It's interesting. They expect us to not know the Latin, but they expect us to understand French. I guess because they were fighting the French at this point, so everybody knew their French. Anyway, we're off track here. On Saturday, May 9th, we fulfilled our purpose of dining by ourselves at the Mitre, according to old custom. There was, on these occasions, a little circumstance of kind attention to Mrs. Williams, which must not be omitted. Before coming out and leaving her to dine alone, he gave her a choice of a chicken, a sweetbread, or any other little nice thing which was carefully sent to her from the tavern, ready dressed. That sounds good right now, sweetbread. Our conversation today, I know not how, turned, I think for the only time at any length during our long acquaintance, upon the sensual intercourse between the sexes. Ooh. The delight of which he ascribed chiefly to imagination. Were it not for imagination, sir, said Johnson, a man would be as happy in the arms of a chambermaid as of a duchess. But such is the adventitious charm of fancy that we find men who have violated the best principles of society and ruined their fame and their fortune, that they might possess a woman of rank. It would not be proper to record the particulars of such a conversation in moments of unreserved frankness, when nobody was present on whom it could have any hurtful effect. That subject, which, when philosophically treated, may surely employ the mind in as curious discussion, and as innocently as anatomy, provided that those who do treat it keep clear of inflammatory incentives. Sounds like they're talking about, there was a moment where they were talking about boobs or something here. And then it says, from grave to gay, from lively to severe, we were soon engaged in very different speculation, humbly and reverently considering and wondering at the universal mystery of all things, as our imperfect faculties can now judge of them. There are, said Johnston, innumerable questions to which the inquisitive minds can in the state receive no answer. Why do you and I exist? Why was this world created? Since it was to be created, why was it not created sooner? Remember, they think the world is like 5,000 years old at this point. Although I guess we can still ask that now. Why wasn't the world created sooner or later? Or anything? Well, that's all we got. So that night they talked about the meaning of life and sounds like women's breasts. So about average. On Sunday, May 10th, I supped with him at Mr. Hoole's with Sir Joshua Reynolds, my favorite drunk. I have neglected the memorial of this evening so as to remember no more of it than two particulars. One, that he strenuously opposed an argument by Sir Joshua that virtue was preferable to vice, considering this life only, and that a man would be virtuous were it only to preserve his character, and that he expressed much wonder at the curious formation of the bat, the mouse with wings, saying that it was almost as strange a thing in physiology as if the fabulous dragon could be seen. On Tuesday, May 12th, I waited on the Earl of Marchmont to know if his lordship would favor Dr. Johnson with information concerning Pope, whose life he was about to write. Johnson had not flattered himself with the hopes of receiving any civility from this nobleman, for he said to me when I mentioned Lord Marchmont as one who would tell him a great deal about Pope, quote, Sir, he will not tell me nothing. He will tell me nothing, rather. I had the honor of being known to his lordship and implied to him of myself without being commissioned by Johnson. His lordship behaved in the most polite and obliging manner, promised to tell all he recollected about Pope, and was so very courteous as to say, Tell Dr. Johnson I have great respect for him and am ready to show it in any way I can. I am to be in the city tomorrow and will call at his house as I return. His lordship, however, asked, Will he write the lives of the poets partially? He was the first that brought Whig and Tory into a dictionary. And what do you think of this definition of excise? Do you know the history of his aversion to the word transpire? Then, taking down the folio dictionary, he showed it with this censure in its secondary sense. To escape from a secrecy to notice, a sense lately innovated from France without necessity. The truth was, Brooke, who left the Jacobites, first used it. Therefore, it was to be condemned. He should have showed that what word would do for it if it was unnecessary. That's a little over my head. I afterwards put the question to Johnson. Why, sir, said Johnson, get abroad? So that's get abroad, I guess, instead of transpire here. I don't know. I said, that, sir, is using two words. Johnson said, sir, there is no end of this. You may as well insist to keep a word for old age. To have a word for old age. And I said, well, sir, there's senectus. Johnson said, nay, sir, to insist always that there should be one word to express a thing in English because there is only one in another language is to change that language. Now I'm trying to think of a word that means old age in English. Senior? No. No, it's going to drive me nuts now. I'm going to move on. I availed myself of this opportunity to hear from his lordship many particulars both of Pope and Lord Bolingbroke, which I have in writing. I proposed to Lord Marchmont that he should revise Johnson's Life of Pope. So, said his lordship, you would put me in a dangerous situation. You know he knocked down Osborne, the bookseller. Elated with the success of my spontaneous exertion to procure material and respectable aid to Johnson for his very favorite work, The Lives of the Poets, I hastened down to Mr. Thrale's at Streatham, where he now was, that I might ensure his being at home next day. And after dinner, when I thought he would receive the good news in the best humor, I announced it eagerly. I have been at work for you today, sir. I have been with Lord Marchmont. He bade me to tell you he has a great respect for you, and will call on you tomorrow at 1 o'clock and communicate all he knows about Pope. Here I paused, in full expectation that he would be pleased with this intelligence, would praise my active merit, and would be alert to embrace such an offer from a nobleman. Boswell, you don't know Johnson. Oh, man. It's kind of like Calvin and Hobbes. They make a good cartoon, I think. But whatever I had shown in over-exaltation, which provoked his spleen. Oh, he's missing a comma here. But whatever I had shown an over-exaltation, which has provoked his spleen, or whether he was seized with a suspicion that I had obtruded him on Lord Marchmont, and had humbled him too much, or whether there was anything more than an unlucky fit of ill humor, I know not. But to my surprise, the result was Johnson saying, I shall not be in town tomorrow. I don't care to know about Pope. Mrs. Thrale, who was as surprised as I was and a little angry, said, I suppose, sir, Mr. Boswell thought that as you are to write Pope's life, you would wish to know about him. Johnson said, wish? Why, yes. If it rained knowledge, I'd hold out my hand, but I would not give myself the trouble to go in quest of it. Oh, man, I love it when he's a little jerk. There was no arguing with him at this moment. Some time afterwards, he said, Lord Marchmont will call on me, and then I shall call on Lord Marchmont. Mr. Thrale was uneasy at his unaccountable caprice, and told me that if I did not take care to bring about a meeting between Lord Marchmont and him, it would never take place, which would be a great pity. I sent a card to his lordship to be left at Johnson's house, acquainting him that Dr. Johnson could not be in town next day, but would do himself the honor of waiting on him at another time. I don't think Johnson likes when people do stuff for him. He gets a little prickly about that. I give this account fairly as a specimen of that unhappy temper with which this great and good man had occasionally to struggle from something morbid in his constitution. Let the most censorious of my readers suppose himself to have a violent fit of the toothache, or to have received a severe stroke on the shin bone, and when in such a state to be asked a question. And if he has the candor, he will not be surprised at the answers which Johnson sometimes gave in moments of irritation. Which, let me assure them, is exquisitely painful. But it must not be erroneously supposed that he was, in the smallest degree, careless concerning any work which he undertook, or that he was generally thus peevish. It will be seen that in the following year he had a very agreeable interview with Lord Marchmont at his lordship's house. And this very afternoon he soon forgot any fretfulness and fell into conversation as usual. Oh, I got to say, this book is getting better as it's going along. I'm really liking it these days. Anyway, till next time, bye from Boswell. Cheers.